Welcome back to Something in the Wilderness, a podcast dedicated to all of Andrew McMahon's music. My name's Steve, and today I want to talk about a song that doesn't get a whole lot of love, but I have a feeling it's seeing a bit of a resurgence in the last month or so, and I'll talk about why that is. Although I've had guests earlier this year talk with me about songs like Punk Rock Princess, Walking By, and most recently Constantine, this is probably the oldest song we've ever talked about on the show, based on when it was written. It's been fascinating to me on this journey going through all of Andrew's work over the last 20 years, and several times finding material I'd never even heard before. So sometimes, I don't have the history or nostalgia that some of you might, and it definitely changes the way an older song comes across to me. I also thought that since it's December, I'd pick a song where the story takes place around this time of year. The words December and Christmas are mentioned in the song, but the story I read about what inspired the song in Andrew's book, Three Pianos, solidified it for me that this song is based around memories around the holidays. And like Andrew's songs often do, the lyrics of this song remind me of some of my own memories, even when it's a newer song to me. I actually first heard this song in the spring of 2020, and I have a recording of it now, which I only received about a little over a year ago, thanks to a former guest on the show. The song I'm talking about today is Airports. The band is Something Corporate. It was track 4 on the unreleased Galaxy sessions out of 7 songs. Several of the songs in this collection would eventually make their way in some form on another Something Corporate release, but this is only one of 3 of them on that album that wouldn't pop up anywhere else later on. So as far as I've been able to tell, the Galaxy Sessions was recorded at the Galaxy Theater, hence the name. Though I know that at least part of Ready Break was also recorded there. That was Constantine. But in the Galaxy Sessions, it has much more of a studio recorded sound to it, so I don't know if the Galaxy Theater had a studio in the back or something. I do know that this song was one of the first that created some buzz about Something Corporate, and it may have been one of the catalysts to get them signed. Chuck Reed at Interscope Records heard this song, and then they recorded demos of it and If You See Jordan at his studio. They remained friends with Chuck over the years, although they didn't end up signing with him in the end. Although I have nothing official on who actually played on this track, I can surmise that we have Andrew on piano and vocals, Josh Partington and Richard Hernandez on guitars, Kevin Clutch Page on bass, and Brian Ireland on drums. But in place of Richard Hernandez, it could have also been William Tell, depending on when in 2001 the Galaxy Sessions was recorded and when Richard left the band. The only time I know that Andrew has played this live, though, was on one of his Instagram live streams last year, and that's the first place I ever heard it. Setlist FM doesn't list it anywhere else under Something Corporate or any other of his bands throughout the years. I'm sure it's pretty likely that they were playing it in those early days of Something Corporate, but unless I know someone who was actually there for those early days, I can't really say. It seems like it would have been a good addition to the setlist way back when, but I don't know that for sure. Since I first heard it on that live stream on May 5th, 2020, that was pretty memorable. I remember sitting there thinking, how are there still Andrew McMahon songs I don't know? Somehow this one and a few others escaped me back in my MP3 downloading days. And like I said, about 6 months after that live stream, a former guest of mine on the show shared the Galaxy Sessions with me, so now I can listen to it whenever I want, which is nice, so thanks, Jared. I don't ever see this one returning to the set list, though, because if it would have, I assume they would have played it on the Three Pianos tour they just finished up. The set list for that tour consisted of all songs that were from his life and referenced in the book, supposedly, so this would have been the ideal spot for it. But with such an older, deeper cut, I don't know if the majority of the crowd would have really appreciated it. But I know some of you diehards out there would have gone nuts, of course. Andrew wrote this song when he was 15 years old while he was a sophomore in high school and deeply in love. Interestingly, Andrew has stated that this song predates Something Corporate, but we're going to call it a Soko track because it was on an unofficial Soko album, but technically he wrote it before they were a band. And I know we could say the same about several of those early tracks, right? But anyway, he was very excited about it after he wrote it. According to a story he told on Instagram last year, he said it gave him a glimpse of what his future of songwriting could be. He apparently finished it right before he ran out the door to go celebrate New Year's Eve with some friends. It always holds a special place in his heart because it was the first time he felt he was able to capture his life into a song. This is also the first Andrew Penn song that I know of that has the name Jamie in the lyrics. As far as I know, we wouldn't hear that name in another song until 2018's House in the Trees. But one of the most fascinating pieces of his book, to me, was the part about his high school years. And one of the reasons for that was that he talked about Jamie and who she was to him. We knew from the lyrics in House in the Trees that she was a good friend, but it becomes clear in the book that she was more than that. They were in love, and she was his rock during a tumultuous time of his life. Andrew also stated in his book that finishing the song changed the way he approached songwriting forever, because he knew now that he could pull memories from the past to inform his lyrics, and writing in the present day came easy to him. But in this case, he was also writing predictions about what would happen in his future. More on that later. So let's talk a little bit about the sound of the song. The opening piano notes give me these nostalgic vibes. I love it, like it was from another time and place in my life. That happens with some Andrew songs. Just one of the things about his music that's so special to me. But I do have to give credit to some of Andrew's early influences here, because that's most likely what causes this emotion for me. He and I grew up around the same time, and we're probably listening to the same things on the radio. So do yourself a favor and go back and listen to the opening for some of these songs when you get a chance. Bruce Hornsby's Mandolin Rain, Phil Collins' Against All Odds, and most any Billy Joel ballad from the 70s or 80s. You'll get this same type of feel, and it's really obvious where Andrew's influences were coming from. And as I was doing the research for this song, I'm sitting here wondering, why don't I listen to those artists more often? So ironically, after all I've said, I don't think those opening notes really fit with the rest of the song. The song kind of goes off in another direction after those initial notes, and never returns to it. As far as my ears can tell, anyway. But it makes perfect sense for a good artist, though. Your influences come through in small pieces, and then you make the rest of it completely your own. So it may just be because I don't have the memories associated with this song like others in the Galaxy sessions, but there's not much else in the song that really grabs me. And I mean, in terms of something I would go back to this one for. It sounds fine, but I just feel like there was some really strong material in Early Something Corporate, but this one just doesn't compare to those others for me. Again, I have to give credence to the fact that he wrote it when he was 15, so obviously he's not writing his best material at the time for the most part. And again, not having the history with it, I think does affect it. I don't have that nostalgia factor. Otherwise, it's a decent song overall. It seems like all the instruments get a fair share here. I do like when the drums come in at the beginning. I think that sounds pretty cool. And there seems to be this slow build throughout the song overall. But in my opinion, there just isn't much payoff in the end when it comes to the heaviest part of it. And then the song kind of ends similar to how it began with just the piano. But again, as far as I can tell, it never returns to those initial notes we started with, which is kind of what I was looking for. There is one other Something Corporate song from the same era that has a similar sound, and it's called When It Goes Down. I'm not sure if you know that one or not, but I do prefer that one over Airports. But as I alluded to earlier, again, I just don't have the history and nostalgia with this song that I had with When It Goes Down, so that may be why I can unfairly judge one against the other that way. So in general, I can't help but feel like Andrew's lyrics in this song are about more than one thing. I know there's some references to his parents, references to Jamie, and then we have a lot of metaphors and references that I'm not entirely sure about. So let's just start from the beginning. Andrew doesn't mention his parents too often in his music, and those of us who've read his book now know what a complicated relationship he's had with them. But I can't recall any other song that he even mentions his mom in. So with that in mind, the first few lines are surprising to me, so I'll read them here. You little creep, that's what she said. These quotes from your mother get better every day, and you'll be nothing just like your father. At least that's what the kids at school say. My best guess is that he's referring to his own parents, although I don't know that for sure, even though he's saying your mother and your father. It's like he's journaling about the frustration he has with them. It sounds like pretty typical thoughts of a teenager on the surface, though, honestly. I assume he was arguing with his mom around that time that he wrote these lines, and then the line about potentially ending up like his father amounting to nothing. It makes much more sense once you know the history of his father's issues from the book, and it connects back to his father's problems pretty quick in the next set of lines, so I'll come back to that again. But the line that's been jumping out at me a lot, in the past month at least, is, and Jamie spent her Christmas at the airport, and she said planes made her feel like she could get away. So being that House in the Trees is one of my favorite modern Andrew McMahon songs, I really enjoyed putting together the pieces I'd learned from different sources here. Of course, we learned a bit about Jamie and House in the Trees, then Andrew talked about writing Airports in his Instagram livestream last year that I mentioned, and he said it was about a girl he was in love with. And then he mentioned both the lyrics and this song and the importance of Jamie in his life in chapter 13 of his Three Pianos book. When they fell in love, they fell pretty hard and fast. But he mentions other reasons that Jamie was a really important person to him through this time. He struggled without her while she was in Hawaii with her family that Christmas because he was stuck at home, hence the line about spending Christmas in a detox ward. The detox ward was a metaphor for what was happening at home at the time. Ironically, though, his father wouldn't relapse until months after writing this song. It was just a prediction or a prophecy that eventually fulfilled itself. This goes to show the lack of trust Andrew had in his family overcoming the demons they are facing. But it makes the next line so much more intense when he sings, "'Cause some days are just so hard." The song alludes to a lot more than that time at Christmas when Jamie flew away from him, though. The airport at Christmas time is really just one part of the overall story. But it's a good metaphor for a few things, right? Falling hard in love with this girl while his home life was a mess, waiting for her to call, feeling so distant. He was waiting for her to be there for him to support him through this tough time, and he knew when she was home he'd be able to get out of the house by spending more time with her. The next part of the song is where we get our token Andrew Space reference with the lines, "And we hung like space stations and rocket ships and dreams. Liked were things out of the sky. We dressed like kings and queens and lovers and shouted into the night, we're never gonna die." But the next lines are much more clear in what they mean. Nothing cryptic right here. "And I've waited here for hours hoping that you'd call, and my dialing finger's tired and your machine is full. And I've taken 18 showers just to pass the time, and that phone just rang, but it wasn't you on the line, and you don't seem to mind." Those lines are pretty self-explanatory given the context. And the next part was another prediction about their future. That's kind of what he alludes to in the book anyway. See, he and Jamie were in a good spot around Christmas time, but the relationship would eventually go sour. He wrote the lines, "And it was New Year's Eve, but I was thinking of the summer, knowing that at midnight you wouldn't be around." Maybe he was predicting that eventually things between them would come to an end, but I also get the sense from these words that all he meant was he was looking forward to the summer when she'd be around again and they'd be able to spend time together, whereas she wasn't going to be there for New Year's because she was still out in Hawaii. Now, usually I don't go through every lyric in the song, but I do feel like there's enough here to dive into that hasn't been covered in other songs I've talked about. So I'm just going to finish it off. I want to point out the next lines because I'm not real confident that I know what he's referring to in these next lines, but I'm going to take a stab at it anyway. He sings, "And they say children make the greatest soldiers. They do just like they're told and take up less space on the ground. And it seems to me that we'd been here before." I have to believe that he was comparing his home life with a war zone, and that he and his sister were the soldiers, or the casualties, or the consequences of his father's actions and his mother's inaction. And I really like those final lines. Though again, I'm not sure what he's getting at here. This is all speculation of my own. "Where were you when I was at the airport? Where were you when I wanted to fly? Tell me where you were when I was at the airport. These planes fall from the sky. And I wish I had an airport some days, 'cause some days are just so hard." I have to admit, when I first read the lyrics of this song, sometime within the past 18 months, knowing it was part of the Galaxy Sessions from 2001, planes falling from the sky immediately made me think of 9/11. I thought it was a 9/11 reference. But then learning the song was recorded with these lyrics in 1999 and written sometime in 97 threw that theory out the window. So are the planes falling from the sky representative of his feeling that his life is falling apart? And does he wish he had an airport so he could get away, like he said Jamie was able to do in the first verse? That's my best guess. Though I do love those final lines, "and I wish I had an airport some days because some days are just so hard." I do have to say my favorite part of the song is still those opening piano notes I mentioned earlier. Something about them just stirs emotion inside of me. I can't quite put my finger on it. The end of the song doesn't quite get me back there, though. So there's two different versions of this song on YouTube that I'll include in the show notes. There is the regular version, I'll call it, and that is the one that was on the Galaxy Sessions. Then there's the demo version with significantly less guitar. Technical quality isn't quite there, but someone posted it on YouTube, and because it's different enough, I thought it was worth mentioning and putting out there. I do have to say, the opening to the demo version isn't nearly as powerful as I find the Galaxy Sessions version. So I would stick to the Galaxy Sessions version if it was me. I learned recently from another Andrew fan that there was a 4-song demo released under Andrew's own name in 1999, and this lighter version of the song was on it. I have no idea what type of release that had or how widespread it was, but I hadn't heard of this until recently. You can find it listed on Discog.com, but that's the only evidence I have that this EP ever existed. I don't know anybody who has it. But anyway, keeping with alternate versions, I'd say the best version of this song was Andrew's Instagram Live last year that I mentioned earlier. I'll link that one in the show notes as well. It plays a bit more like a ballad without the other instruments. He might even slow it down a bit there, but the way he did it on that live stream, I just feel like it fits the song more. I'm really glad that Andrew spent a couple pages in his Three Pianos book telling the story of this song, because it really helped give me some context to where this song fits into Andrew's life. The lyrics make so much more sense now. There's also just knowing where he was in his life when he wrote all these lyrics that I think helps as well. And as much as I like House in the Trees, I actually can't believe that I didn't even notice that this song's about Jamie until I read that part of the book and then came back and reread the lyrics to this song this past month. And that's why I knew I had to do this song right now. fitting for the season, but also the timing with the book. Now, I know Kelly is the number one woman in Andrew's life, but it is realistic to consider his other relationships to understand his life as a whole, too. Thank you, everyone, again for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another holiday-related song. And let's see if you can guess what it is. I would say it's a much newer song to the catalog compared to the one I talked about today, but that's all I'm going to give you for now. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast on any app you're listening so more people can find it. I love hearing your feedback and talking to other fans like myself who just love digging into the catalog. So feel free to chat me on Instagram or comment on posts anywhere, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I know that when I listen to other music podcasts, so often I want to put in my 2 cents about the song they're talking about. And I'm sure if you're listening, you probably have a passionate opinion like I do about these songs. So feel free to let me know. And if you'd rather message me directly, email somethinginthewilderness@gmail.com. And I wish I had an airport some days.